Welcome back, everybody. This week we have yet another very special guest for y'all. Everybody, welcome to the show, Will Perkins. Welcome to the show, Will.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And a Rochester native or someone living in Rochester. So that's yeah.
Just east of it. So yeah, I'm drowned in either rain or snow pretty much anytime you get me.
Yeah, it's
right there with us.
At one point though, I mean, well, a lot of the comic shops have closed now, but there was always like an awesome comic presence in the city of Rochester, and that was like one of the things that got me back into comics when I was going to school there, and that's how Chris and I met. So it's not all bad, I guess, right?
It's just always walking around being like, you don't like leaving your house either? Oh my god, okay.
Yeah, perfect.
What do you do?
Yeah,
what creative thing do you do to kill 8 months of snow?
Awesome. Well, hey man, thanks for being on the show. And with every first timer on the show, we like to do a quick origin story. It doesn't have to be too long, but what got you into obviously illustrating and drawing a comic? But have you always read comics at an early age? Where did it start for you, kind of?
It depends on how far you want to go back. Like, first, my parents have sex. No.
Okay, nice. No, let's start there. Yeah.
Nice. So
I always start my origin in December of 1987 when a man and a woman got together.
Right.
In the 9 months I came.
First, my mom was kicking. No. So I don't. I've been drawing as far back as I can remember. Like, that was my favorite thing to do. You know, like drawing. You know, being 5 years old and drawing really crappy comics with my best friend. But my origin story, at least the one that I've like mythologized, was my parents took me to the West Irondequoit Public Library.
Oh wow!
And they always were like, just go, like just. It would felt like we'd spend hours there, and there was like the comic book section, right? It was about this big.
Yep. And
it had Calvin and Hobbes. It had Far Side, and then anything else, and there was Dark Knight Returns in the middle of it. And I'm like 5 years old, and like, Batman!
That's awesome.
And then you open it up, and it's like, zombie Superman! What is going on here? And I probably took that out every couple of weeks, and just like look over the pictures. I had no idea what was going on. Then years later, in like high school and middle school, I was at my buddy's house, and I saw like issue 3 just sitting there, like a loose one of it. It's like, what is this? And I was hooked. I was back in.
Yeah.
And now I had like a thing to draw.
Right.
And from that point forward, really, I was just kind of. I mean, I was always reading comics the entire time. You know, you take your breaks for like, you know, you meet girls for the first time, and then you take a little break, and then you know you get really, really poor, so you take another break.
Yep.
And then all you really do that means is you reread whatever you've collected so far endlessly.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And then I graduated college. I had gone to school to be a teacher. Like I had like an English degree.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm going to go super senior. I want an art degree.
Nice,
I don't want to teach. And you know, you get out with an art degree. You can't draw anything yet. And I just started working a really crap job and just sketching any idea I could possibly come up with or find, anything. And luckily my brother, Mike Perkins, who's the editor-in-chief at 215 Inc. and a hell of a writer in his own right.
Yep.
And he and I would just kind of spitball together. It's what we had always done as kids. So it was like, I'm pretty good at the drawing stuff. You're pretty good at the writing stuff. Maybe we just do this. Let's just try one.
Right.
Just try one, right? And we did, and we kind of pitched it to 215 Inc. at the time through Steve Lindsay of Jesus Hates Zombies fame.
Yep.
And he kind of brought us into that crew and just kind of went from there. Small press for life, but like
yeah, for sure.
People you meet in small press, you tend to collect and then just move forward with. Ever since then, I've been doing it every single day of my life.
Awesome. And I think my first exposure to you was in a FUBAR. You did some work, right?
Oh yeah.
Got to do some zombie work.
Yep. You always start with some zombie work. That was a long time ago. Yeah, but that same kind of thing. You know, the guys in Small Press Commandos, Jeff McComsey and Steve Becker were just like, yeah, just try one. And I was like, all right. Like, people in comics are so welcoming. This is great.
Right.
Yeah, I'll try one.
Yeah.
Try another one. Yeah.
So,
awesome.
for listeners outside of our general realm of Rochester, New York, he brought up so many local names that I just got really excited thinking back, like, 5-10 years ago when all that was going down. But what makes me laugh is my entire life always comes back to Philly, because 215 Inc. is actually a Philly-based company as well. So, like, the two things that are Chris just merged in this great little time period in our local comic atmosphere.
And it's funny, like, it's that, like, how do you know it's the best time of your life when it's happening? Like, it's just a whole bunch of people just trying to make comic books, and, like, you're sleeping on floors at comic conventions, and it's great.
You didn't think
that's
of
how I met Eric.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And then you guys. So who did Eric have the idea for Goblin, or was that like something you guys kind of came up with together? Or?
Well, Eric and I met through 215 Inc. He was doing a book called Dead Horse. And he's since had a long career, a bunch of different really great small press, self-created books like Planet Gigantic and stuff. And I had seen his work in Planet Gigantic, and it was like this like never-ending story, sci-fi, Star Wars romp. And it was like, it's everything I love about fantasy sci-fi. And I just kept pestering him. He kind of one day offered me a job on it. I did a short little backup in like a third issue that was same kind of thing, just fun 80s fantasy romp. And it's kind of like in comics, if you get a writer that you love to work with, you get your hooks in them, and you just don't let go. Because it's like they're the lifeblood, right? They're just like pumping ideas into you,
right?
And we did some stuff. We did a book with Dark Horse back in 2017 called Gregory's Suicide. Total opposite of the spectrum of as Goblin, but it was it's like our first real mainstream effort, and very few people read it, as they usually do. But he came to me, we just keep pitching projects to each other, and he had this idea for Goblin, and he came to me with an idea. He's like, I don't know what this is yet, but, and forgive me if I'm being too long-winded.
No, that's fine.
And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm thinking I'm going to write a children's book. Maybe I'll need some illustrations here and there from you. And I was like, well, tell me about it. And he kind of lays this thing out, and then it's in the beginning it was a much darker, because like his influence was Legend. Like he's just like that visual presence of Legend, not necessarily storytelling, but the visual of it. And we would talk about like Dark Crystal and Neverending Story, and these like 80s Germanic dark fantasies that we loved, that before there was a PG-13 in between R and PG.
Right.
And he told me this story of like a revenge story. We both love video games, and he was saying, it's you go into Skyrim, you slaughter an entire cave full of goblins,
right? And
then you go about your merry way, and you're going to be king. But like meanwhile, that one you left alone in the middle of that dungeon, like that's shitty, right?
Yeah,
like they were just minding their own business, lighting candles for you before you come into the dungeon,
right?
And so I started really hounding him, because like I think he wanted to write a book with it. Eric's so talented. Like he's got a book eventually, and I'm going to just keep trying to keep him from doing it and giving me a comic book.
Yeah.
And my usual trick with him is like, give me 8 pages. Just give me 8 pages. Just write 8 pages of a comic script. We'll see what it looks like on paper.
Right.
And it was dark. It was fun. It was gritty, but it was a little too dark. It was kind of, we were sitting in between tones. So we finally landed in that PG-13 era after we got some really good feedback from a few editors and things. And we took this pitch, we completely retooled it. I basically went back to the beginning and redid it with Eric, kind of cleaned it up, and we had this middle school grade aged, and up fantasy adventure, like a revenge comic, a road story. It's great. Yeah. And luckily for me, Eric was like, I want to, like, let's do this. Let's pitch this thing. I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, let's do this.
And I would say, like you said, children's book or somewhere in between. I would agree with that, because it's lighthearted, but it's not like, for children, but it's also not only adults. Like you said, it's right in the middle there.
It's like hard. heartfelt with stakes. Like that's like someone could die, but you're not going to necessarily see guts.
Right.
Which is hard because like I said, our previous book was Gregory's suicide, right? It was like an attempt at like a gritty, near future Black Mirror episode, and this was the total opposite. So we have to keep doing that. Like, all right, what's too much? What can kids handle versus what would be like pandering to them?
Well, and like I don't want to spoil the book at all, but there is like a chapter in there where a problem occurs, and it's not just like, okay, I'm a goblin. How do I like blow something up or kill somebody? Literally just uses his wits and sits there and realizes like, what's a goblin's greatest strength? We flash back to the beginning of the book. We get a little tense of that, and he kind of wits his way out of the situation, which was just a really cool chapter of just it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be this dark, gritty thing. It can be kind of a fun, lighthearted moment, which I really liked.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite movies was always Unforgiven. And it's the idea of like, remember that as being an incredibly violent movie, and it really isn't.
Right.
It's kind of antithetical to that, and it's Goblin. The appeal that I have with Eric's writing is it's always just a little off genre. It's more about that fantasy than it is the adventure, or there's always heart in his writing, and it was a blast. It's my favorite project I've ever worked on.
Yeah, and it's a few pages in, like you said, like you don't think you'd care about a goblin, but like a few pages in, you're like, oh shit, like I actually, have feelings for this. Yeah, I feel so bad. Like let's do it, man. Like you could do it. Yeah.
Well, see, it makes me laugh because back in the day when I played Magic the Gathering much more than I do now, I was the little shitty kid who came in with the goblin deck all the time. So I have this preconceived notion of what goblins are, and reading this, I'm just like, oh, a little kid.
Like, they're not so bad, right?
Right. Yeah. And we just, it was all the same thing. We're like, kind of like, what are our favorite things? Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. Like, let's just kind of play around in our favorite stuff.
Right.
So let me ask you logistically with this book. When reading it, I like the chapter breakout and how each kind of chapter or story felt kind of one and done, and almost like you could have just read it on its own. So why go with a OGN as opposed to trying to do this issue by issue?
Well, Eric and I have a lot of similar proclivities to this stuff. Like I love a singular object, right? Like a thing. It's done, it's on the shelf, you have it. Starting up in small press, you guys know the pain of going up to the convention table and being like, this looks really good, do you have issue 1? Like, no, I just have 47 copies of issue 3.
Right. Yeah.
Right? So like from a purely selfish standpoint, one and done, right? You just, as a person who loves comic books, holding one thing and just, it's all right there. But also, you're not, you're already a slave to the page turn, you're a slave to panel, but now suddenly you don't have to spend all this time at the beginning of the next chapter like, all right, now let's wrap up what we did previously and what we did after, and like we can just keep the momentum moving, because it is a road book. It's a story about these characters going on this journey together and what happens and how it changes them. And I don't, it's sometimes having to spend that time spinning your wheels, it just kind of, it deflates that momentum that you've already built up. And I don't know, we talked about it, we discussed it, and we're just kind of like, you know what, we want this to be a fantasy epic. We want it to be one thing you hold, especially for, like we said, because we're going for younger kids, not something that they have to like worry about finding one issue or not. Just be able to buy it for your kid, read it for your kid, read it with your kid, or like you said, we aim to hit that middle ground where you can also just enjoy it. It's not going to be talking down or anything.
And as far as like the whole construction of it, I mean, we talked about a little about this before we were recording, but you kind of had a lot of freedom. I mean, there's a few pages where there's no dialogue, and it's just a lot of cool stuff happening, whether we're getting like glimpses, into the future or something like that. So was that, you were kind of just given like, okay, this is the layout that I want, and you just get to draw it, there's no dialogue, so.
Well, Eric and I have a very, I always like to call it, like, we have a very honest relationship with each other.
Mhm.
Where, like, in the beginning, I'll tell him like story above all else. So like, I will fight you tooth and nail for an idea,
Right.
but if one of us isn't happy, we're not doing it, right?
Mhm.
So even if it's like you just feel it in your heart, and so Eric would give me these scripts where, that page that has no dialogue on it,
Yeah.
in the script is like 2 pages long.
Okay.
Because he's communicating with me what he in the liner notes, listen to this song, or I'm referencing this kind of a tone, and so it would be like, it's more of a dialogue that we'll have probably on those pages specifically. We'll have the most back and forth.
Wow.
Because I'll do layouts, and like I said, I'd be like, this is what I'm feeling from your script, and he'll look at it, and then he'll rewrite a script to it, and we kind of go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So even just like last week, I read the most recent version of the book after Eric had lettered it, and it was the same kind of thing. We're just like, oh, look, you changed even more from this. Like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of like slowly narrowing from both sides until you get that perfect point.
Huh. Yeah, it's interesting, and it flows really nicely though. It's not like, you hit the art and then you got to stop. It still kind of progresses nicely through the story, between the dialogue and the parts without. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool, and it really shows you. I mean, your illustration, like, that really makes the story, I think, too. The art of it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's there's something we always used to joke about it. We were talking about like page drop. This thing we used to call it when a person is reading a comic book, and whatever reason, whether it be too much dialogue or the art is just not flowing, but you stop reading and you start just like skimming.
Mm-hmm.
And like, as soon as that happens, you're out of the flow. You've lost the reader.
Right.
And it's like, that's the nightmare. I'm always trying to avoid that exact moment, because I hate it when I'm reading a book and I realize, like, I'm not really paying attention. I'm just looking at this thing.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here staring at these ones.
I'm not in the book, and I'm here because I want to be in this. I want to escape.
Right.
So the last series you did, I'm sorry, I'm zoning on the name, but was that also at Dark Horse?
The Gregory Suicide?
Gregory Suicide, yes.
Yes, we did. We brought that to Dark Horse, and they produced a wonderful like hardcover for us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was back in 2017, I believe.
Okay.
So you guys, when you were making this book, you had some sort of relationship with Dark Horse ahead of time, and obviously had them in mind when you were finishing it up.
Yeah, because both of us, you always have that, like, when you're a little kid, you're like, I want to work for Dark Horse someday.
Yeah, right.
That's what I want to be. Yeah, right.
Yep.
And we had a great experience with them, and like I said, the final product was such high quality, and this felt like a Dark Horse book when we were kind of. So it was like, well, of course we'll go. Everything in comics is who you know, right? It's not that many people,
Right?
And we're like, well, we'll go, we'll pitch it, we'll send it to Mike Richardson over at Dark Horse, and get their feedback on it first after we got the pitch kind of locked in, and they were happy to give it a try. It was kind of a fairly easy sell on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right with that. It does feel like a Dark Horse book. But I guess like one more thing about the art too. I know, I guess I understand how you can write a story with heart, but how do you add like lightheartedness, or like, you know what I mean, to your art? How do you do that? Because you seem to do that pretty well in this. But
I think I appreciate that, because that's my aim. Is like and we went through the 90s where everything was just like, how do you make this dark and edgy?
Yeah, right.
Everybody
exactly.
just like sprinkled that on everything.
Yep.
And I didn't love that stuff growing up. I grew up on Jim Henson. I want that.
Right.
I want a little bit of seriousness with some importance to it. And I don't know. You just like, it's like you watch a movie in your head, and you try to capture the thing that makes you smile in your own head, and then try to make the actors act on the page in the same way. So like, never going for the, like, the squinty-eyed, grim, dark thing that you immediately jump to, and just a lot of redrawing.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense. Like, not so many sharp edges, facial expressions, stuff like that. I guess that, yeah.
Like finding, I joke, like, luckily I work a lot while my wife is at work, and because, like, honestly, like, you draw explosions by making explosion noises. You swing swords, you make sword clang noises. Like, you find yourself mimicking the faces and just like, oh my god, he's looking at me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you'll see a lot of artists in Starbucks.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Who's that guy in his chair?
That's amazing. The truth comes out of what actually goes on. That's awesome.
That's you got to do like hide in your houses.
Right. You got to do like a B-side and like record that or something and like release it after. Like, these are the faces.
Have to set up a camera while just facing me while I'm drawing. Yeah. Be like, was it that Shia LaBeouf watching all of his?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, you can sit in the theater and watch all of his movies in a row.
Amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so when can we expect this book out? Is there a release date?
Comic book stores is May 26th, and then in bookstores everywhere on June 8th. We're still available for pre-order. Obviously, you can go to like Amazon, Target, Walmart, all the big ones.
Yep.
But in fact, let me just double check that real quick. Yeah, Walmart, Target, Barnes and Noble, and Amazon. We have realmofgoblin.com. Eric is a web designer by trade, so he set up a nice little landing spot.
Mm-hmm.
So you can pre-order right through there, watch the trailer, all that stuff. But otherwise, head to your comic book store and or your bookstore and ask them for it.
Is there a tabletop? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for all previous Will Perkins books, especially the 215 stuff, is that still in print?
Yeah, so you should be. If you go online, I'm going to be honest with you, if you go online and find Gregory Suicide, you're going to be sitting pretty. You'll get it for a song.
Yeah.
And if you go to your comic shop, you like Beware, any of the stuff that I did for 215 Inc., you still should be able to get that, have them order that. It'll probably come directly from my house.
Awesome.
And then I think you were mentioning, if you go to the Realm of Goblin, actually, we put together a cool little, I guess, promo. It kind of came out of a conversation last fall. We're like, what's something fun we can do with this, right? Like, we don't want to just be on Facebook annoying all of our family and friends, being like, buy our book.
Right.
As much as buy our book.
Yeah.
But Eric had recently discovered Dungeons and Dragons. Like, he had some other exposure, being he's a little bit older than me, so being a child of the 80s.
Okay.
And he's like, "Do you play Dungeons and Dragons?" I was like, "Yeah, actually, I still do. Like, I did a lot when I was a kid, but I still do." Yeah. He's like, "Have you seen these manuals and how cool they are?" I was like, "Yes, I do."
Oh yeah,
that's the coolest part of Dungeons and Dragons. Playing is just incidental.
Mm-hmm.
And so Eric wrote this prequel module that you can play. You can download it off Realm of Goblin for free.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's all set in the world of the comic. It's really meant to be played before, but you can play it after you've read the book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of these little kisses with history within our own world. You can kind of influence the comic a little bit, kind of explore the spaces in between everything that we kind of spent so much time filling in.
That's so cool. Yeah, because I had seen there's something about tabletop involved with it. So that's so funny. It's like, have you heard of these modules?
You're right.
Have you seen these things? Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So I did some illustrations for it, and the best part is I got to play test it, which I'd never done before. So it's like, cool. Coming back with a group of people and be like, all right, well, here's where all my murder hobos ruined the last game. So here's the problems we're gonna have.
Yeah.
But now it's all up. We got it. It's you can go right to realmofgoblin.com and download it for free. Try it out.
Yeah, I was just looking at it, and it's compatible with 5th edition.
5th edition, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That's cool. That's a cool thing to do. I wish more people did that, especially when they're doing fantasy stuff. I remember, what was the series? The Last God that Philip Kennedy Johnson did, and he did a whole book where he did the same thing. He saw an issue that was just like tabletop stuff. It's all with Dungeons and Dragons, and I just wish more people did this stuff. It's just a cool idea.
Especially because Wizards of the Coast, they're so cool about it being like letting you just put homebrew content out there. I mean, how you can stop it really, but
Hell, they're making their own homebrew content now. You can buy a Rick and Morty and a Stranger Things
yeah,
edition.
all that stuff. Yeah,
Oh yeah, I did see that.
yeah,
Well,
all that wild stuff's out there.
But yeah, luckily, I had to. There's a lot of conversations of trying to teach someone who's never really put in 100 hours into Dungeons and Dragons that magic system alone. Trying to fine tooth comb that was interesting, but
yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Just a little something to expand the universe even more. Yeah, and it fits so well with the story. Awesome. Yeah. So thanks, Will. If we want our listeners, viewers to follow you, where's the best place to send them?
Well, let's see. On Twitter, I'm Dill Gherkins. You can just search for Will Perkins and find me that way.
Yep.
Will Perkins Comics on Instagram. And for anything else, either willperkinscomics.com or realmofgoblin.com.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody, I'll have those links down in the show notes below, so make sure to check them out. The Goblin website especially is just really cool.
Yeah.
So, Will, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yep.
Look forward to talking again soon, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being
Anytime.
here.